So Apes is a huge fan of superlatives, right? And so the largest dam is in China. It's called the Three Gorges Dam. And so this dam actually displaced a massive number of people. 1.2 million people were displaced for the reservoir behind this dam. And you can see right here is the Yangtze River that comes out to the Yellow Sea. And then here is the Three Gorges Dam. Oh, and I'm not even in full screen. Here you go. And so it is a massive, massive dam. Here's a bad picture of it up here. And there actually has been some seismic activity um, around the dam. So there is definite worry that this dam is going to fail. So fingers crossed it doesn't, because there is a lot of people downstream that would be in really bad shape if that happened. And of course, sedimentation is one of the largest issues of this dam being where it is. There's lots of sediment behind it, and there's less sediment downstream. So all of these nutrient-rich sediments that are sitting behind the dam are not getting downstream here. And so because it's so large, there is a lot of sediment behind it. So another way that we can increase water supply is actually doing a water transfer. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We're transferring water from where is water rich to areas that are water poor. And so you guys can see here, right? This is actually a water transfer project where I'm taking water and rerouting it in this artificial, riverbed. And so this can provide water for people and agriculture in areas that don't have that much water. So something like Las Vegas, for example. And the problem with that is that it's very expensive because it's a massive project. If you can think about building an artificial river from where there is water to where you need it, that is a massive project. So it's super expensive. And then you end up with a large amount of water loss through evaporation, because you have this surface area sitting on the top of the water here that's getting evaporated. Obviously, it's going to water poor areas, which are areas that have a high rate of evaporation anyway. So you're losing water due to evaporation. You're also losing it to any kind of failure in the system. So leaks. Um, and so the ecosystems that had the water now don't have as much water as they usually do. And so the amount of fresh water that's there is actually reduced, obviously, I would hope. And so this degrades all kinds of marshes, wetlands, any kind of ecosystem that is dependent on that water supply. And so therefore, any kind of wildlife that's living in them is actually going to be affected as well. And so not only that, because there's not as much fresh water coming in, it's actually reducing the flushing of pollutants out of certain systems. So these marshes that have pollutants in them, instead of being flushed out, they're actually holding on to those pollutants. And so it can be a real political issue as well, because these these false riverbeds can go across borders. And so if I take water from one place to the other, and it's across some sort of border, there can be some international issues happening. And so one of the largest water diversion projects or water transfers, again, is in China. And it transfers 6 trillion gallons of water per year from the Yangtze River in southern China to northern China. So these are the routes. If you guys look at this picture below in red, you have these routes from the Yangtze River down to northern China. And they are providing safe drinking water to a huge number of people. And the problem is, though, is that 40% of the rivers are polluted, and so they need fresh water because the rivers that are available to them are not okay to drink. And not only that, it's also providing a lot of water for irrigation. So you have Beijing is getting their water from this place here in southern China. So another example of a water transfer is the Aral Sea. And so there's a diversion of two of the rivers that supply water to the Aral Sea. And this is to irrigate crops such as cotton and rice in an area that is prone to a high amount of evaporation. So you guys can see right here's like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. So we're looking at the Middle East here, which is, a pretty arid area. And so the Aral Sea has lost about 90% of its volume. So here's a picture of the Aral Sea, what it used to be, and here's a picture of it now. So you can see it's quite a difference. And so, the rivers that were supplying it here are actually being transferred, and so it is not getting the fresh water that it needs. And 85% of the wetlands have been eliminated around the Aral Sea. 50% of the local mammals and birds have disappeared because they don't have the ecosystem to live there. There's the salt concentration is increased because the fresh water input has decreased. There's a lot of particulate pollution because this area here, which used to be underwater, is now exposed to the air and blows around. And there is an altered climate as well because you have this massive body of water that's no longer there. That means that there's going to be less rain. You have a hotter, drier summer and colder winters. So you're actually altering the climate when you alter these big water bodies around an area. And of course, you'd have a reduced crop yield because, like I said, right, it's a lot drier, and so your crop is going to go down. So another water transfer here in the U.S. is the California State Water Project. And the California State Water Project uses dams, pumps, aqueducts to transfer water from up here in the northeast California to Southern California, where it is, a lot drier. And so there is really heavy irrigation for cropland in California. It supplies half of the U.S. produce. If you guys look at where your produce is coming from in the grocery store, sorry, my battery's running low. That's where a lot of crops are coming from. And so the Sacramento River has been severely degraded, and it's also decreasing the water levels in the lakes up in Northern California as well.